Sorry about that, getting used to this new technology. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to the confirmation hearing for the post of Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime. Before we begin, the meeting is being held in public and it's live. Welcome the Mayor and his staff, post candidate Kilvinder. Good morning. If I could ask everyone present to introduce, starting here at the and just
Good morning, I am Peter Clark. I am acting as the monitoring officer for the Police and Crime panel today.
Henry Nottage, Councillor.
Good morning, Councillor Ruth Milsom. I'm Councillor in Crooks and Cross.
I'm Richard Hindley. I'm one of.
Good morning, I'm Councillor.
I'm Councillor Steve Hunt from Darton East Ward in Barnsley.
Good morning, Councillor Tim Baum-Dixon from Anston Ward in Rotherham.
Good morning, I'm Kilvinder Vigurs, the Mayor's.
Good morning, David Peet. I'm working.
Good morning, Andrew Shirt, Panel Support Officer for the Police and Crime Panel.
I'll hand over now to Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So a procedure has been circulated to panel members, setting out your roles and responsibilities in detail, but I'll answer any questions. The first part to select Kilvinder as the proposed candidate for Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, and also to allow the panel to ask any questions to the Mayor and to satisfy yourselves about how this process has been undertaken. Kilvinder, any questions as the Mayor's preferred candidate? Principles, professional competence and personal independence. Guidance then sets out the three options the panel has based on the are to recommend to appoint, to endorse the appointments but include recommendations, or recommend not to appoint. The panel does not have any power of veto over the appointment. The panel will consider its recommendation in a closed session, so once we've finished our the Chair will ask Kilvinder, the Mayor, and his officers to leave while the panel consider stop at that point, as we'll be in private session. Once the panel's reached its decision, it's our intention to invite you all back in, and the Chair will informally share the panel's decision. Does anyone have any questions on this process?
Declarations of interest. Item 2, sorry about that.
Just to let everyone know, we've received apologies for absence from councillors Miss Gill and Anderson, and from independent members Mr Carrott and Miss Griffin. The only item, as I've already mentioned, that will be considered in the absence of public and press is when the panel is coming to its decision.
Item 4, declarations of interest by individual members in relation to any item of business on this agenda, please. Item 5. Items of the Mayor's report. Members and officers wish, and I will bring them in. So if I could invite the Mayor to the selection process, which is contained within your pack, item 5. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Thank you. Just keeping you on your toes. Making the time to be with us today. I know not everybody could accommodate this time, so apologies to those. Time slot, and I'm genuinely grateful for those that have been able to the Simcoe officers. And since taking over the responsibilities formerly held by the PCC in the role of Police and Crime Commissioner, taking on those responsibilities, better understanding the work, them to account, hearing from communities across the region about their experiences of crime and feelings of safety involved in the criminal justice system, and of course being held to account by you. I think it's fair to say that over the last number of months since I took on those functions in this organisation in oversight of South Yorkshire Police, there have been some difficult moments. I think we all know what those are, from responding to the shameful riots in Manvers and then the work to unite our communities and recover our communities after that. That experience, seeing the tragic impact of knife crime on our communities, the issue that we saw Harvey and his family that they have been through, which has been obviously haunting not just the family but the whole of that community and our communities. Continuing to support justice for the families involved in Hillsborough, the victims of Hillsborough, Orgreave and historic child and sexual exploitation. I've set my first policing budget, set my first police precepts and published my first police and crime plan for South Yorkshire. So we've been busy, but there is still obviously a huge amount more to do. That's why I'm really pleased today to be sat before you at a confirmation hearing for a Deputy Mayor in ensuring our communities are safer and our policing is ever more effective. That role will play a critical part in delivering the changes we need and the safety that I know and you know our residents deserve and of course expect rightly. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kilvinder Vigurs as my preferred candidate for Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime in South Yorkshire. With over 30 years of experience in the criminal justice system, Kilvinder is coachable, as a trainee probation officer and has worked her way right up to Regional Probation Director for Yorkshire and the Humber. She brings a wealth of expertise that I know is going to help us tackle the growth. She'll be absolutely key in ensuring we're not just responding to crime, but that we're working to prevent it in the first place. Agree with stopping people from becoming victims of crime head on, which we've had numerous last 12 months. The role of Deputy Mayor is all about bringing the right balance of high challenge and high support to the Chief Constable. We need someone who can hold the police to account, push for change where it's that will help our police deliver the best service to community our region. As panel members know, I know that you agree that we're not here to settle for good enough, and I'd never expected to settle for good enough. We want to make sure that communities are safe and that our police are in the best possible position to do their job going forward. At the same time, the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime will be keeping a close eye on performance, as you would expect, not just for the sake of it, but to ensure that any issues, big or small, are picked up early and escalated when necessary. Our police force was rated as outstanding in its last inspection, and while we're proud of that achievement, rightly proud of that achievement, we're now waiting the outcome of the latest inspections. Have seen significant downgrades for most police forces, and I'm conscious of that challenge. We understand the challenges the force has faced in recent years, but we're not going to accept a reduction in the level of service provided to our communities or anything less than the very best. Through Kilvinder, I will want reassurance on behalf of every person in South Yorkshire, including yourselves, that we have the best possible police service here. That's why my new police and crime plan is a partnership plan as well, because policing doesn't happen in isolation, as I think we all understand. It calls on all public services to play tackling the root causes of crime and supporting the people that we serve. We have to be honest about the historical challenges that we face, both in terms of the legacy of Hillsborough, CSE and Orgreave, and of the past accounting errors uncovered last year. These issues of understanding impacted trust and confidence, and they cannot and will not be ignored by me or as Kilvinder. Policing and Crime will join me in working closely with the government to address them in a way that is fair to our residents who rightly expect transparency, accountability, deserve justice and reassurance, that lessons have been learned. This work won't be easy, I know that, you know that, but it's a more trusted service for the future. Beyond the financial gap that we uncovered last year, we know the police budget is tight everywhere after 14 years of austerity and resource. Will work with me to advocate for our police need, I would hope, with your. But we also have to be clear about what our communities expect and what our police safe. And at a time when every penny counts, we get the most out of all the money we do have, and of course we would always want more. But our focus is on the issues that affect our communities the most. The appointment of Kilvinder, I firmly believe, will strengthen the leadership capacity across all our partners, because we know that safety isn't just about policing, as I say, it's about everything that matter. So our communities, we've got to bring people together, make sure we're tackling the problems to represent. I think this is a really exciting moment for us, certainly for me, and I'm confident Kilvinder will make a real and significant and lasting difference. The Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime will play a crucial role in our mission to build a safer, fairer and more responsive system for everyone. I also want to make clear that while the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime will take on the day-to-day responsibilities, I will continue always to remain ultimately responsible for Police and Crime Commissioner responsibilities in South Yorkshire, as you would expect. There are a few key areas that I'm not allowed in law to delegate. Those are setting the policing budget and the police precepts, hiring and firing the Chief Constable, and for issuing the South Yorkshire Police and Crime Plan. I'm also delighted to announce that after a robust and thorough process, I've asked Kilvinder to take on the Equalities Commissioner role as well, promoting equalities within authorities' work and ensuring the voices of communities right across South Yorkshire are heard and inform police practice. I know that with Kilvinder and I working closely together, we can achieve so much more for South Yorkshire and keep our communities safe. Subject to the outcome of today's hearing, I look forward to her starting with us in June. So I'd like to pass over to Kilvinder to allow her to show you, as she has me, why she is the right person for the role of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Oliver, for your vote of confidence. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to join and real changes for the communities of South Yorkshire. The Yorkshire woman, and hope that you won't be offended that I am just from further up the M1. I'm privileged to work in South Yorkshire that we should be proud of. I'm looking forward to engaging the communities of South Yorkshire and listening how the Mayor and I can make the relevant improvements. My professional career started. I was part of the generation from the north, particularly in the south, in Oxfordshire. I quickly specialised more work around domestic abuse and safeguarding, and just ensuring that child protection. Throughout my career, the victims and other stakeholders, our services to serve the communities. As the Mayor says, I do have my way up to my current position, and I'm genuinely humbled to be the Mayor's preferred candidate. The Mayor knows that I'm keen to start delivering on the new Police and Crime Plan, which was recently published. However, we need the support of criminal justice and other partners, including community members, to achieve the positive outcomes that we aspire to. I want to ensure that the public has the confidence and the trust of South Yorkshire Police and proactively showcase the excellent work, strong governance arrangements in place, that decision making. The public have a right to know what we are doing and how it's. As Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, I'm keen to focus on antisocial behaviour, which can make so many people get resources to reduce violence against women and girls and crime. Most importantly, we should not forget our victims. Life was taken so needlessly. the Mayor has asked me to champion equalities for the combined authority. At times others may believe South Yorkshire should be proud of its diverse communities, and while many people consider race and religion, about differences means thinking about our young people, our elderly, our disabled people, ensuring they've got access to services, including thereby able to contribute to society. We need to understand the barriers that prevent them from achieving their potential. This includes education for white working class boys, or as I said, public transport for our old and young. So diversity is all encompassing. The equalities agenda comes back to the police being the public and the public being the police. I'm looking forward to learning from other deputy mayors across the country, particularly those in Yorkshire who've already reached out to me, and understanding how they see it. As deputy mayor, I will undertake the mayor took on the responsibilities. Subject to your report and your recommendations, I will start going out and about and listening to our communities, speaking to key stakeholders and building. I very much look forward to both elected and independent members, and as we all
Thank you, Kilvinder.
thank you.
In terms of the Mayor's report, members and officers wishing to ask questions could please raise their hands at this time, accordingly. Thank you. Okay, so just to remind members that this is not a rerun of the panel to review the proposed to the Mayor. The question is to specific members, so there should be no reason to raise their hands. Anything you wish to communicate during the hearing, please indicate and I will bring you in. Ensure smooth and ring. Starting with question, which is mine. Kilvinder, could you undertake as a deputy what you see as being your key mayor's office?
I think the role is multifaceted, so it's hard to looking at things in parallel. So I think the thing I bring is together. I would suggest most of my career has been about keeping that stakeholders include communities and board of that we can hear from the communities. Working with the police well over 30 years now, and actually it's not part of my 31 years. I used to work with South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire Police before then as well. So understanding the mechanics of how the police statutory partnerships where we can influence important. So I understand all those mechanics, be it local government and national government. I also think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to things like courts and in rooms with victims who family members and themselves crimes, and again have that lived experience of working with people to be able to bring that to fore as well. Though I think whether it be in London with the Mayor's office, the Met around knife crime and the harm it does not just to the families but also the young people who commit it for a long time, not realising that actually and done a lot of damage. So that experience, Also in relation to my experience of integrated offender management, and that social behaviour as well, so looking at the causes of crime, be it mental health, families, but also looking at the controls that I can put in place. I could go on forever because I have got decades of experience of working within crime and policing, so shall I pause this as a supplementary?
I have to say that's a great start, Kilvinder. You're very reassuring that you know the depth of knowledge that you've got. But yes, if you would like to just stop there and ask for questions, that would be okay. If there's any questions at this time? Okay, would you like to continue and finish, or is that
No, I'm fine there. I'm sure there'll be more coming out with the questions otherwise.
Okay then, so that's great. That was a great answer for me. I'll pass you now on to Councillor Horner.
But partly answered this question already, but what skills do you have that will do you think you have any gaps in your skills that you might?
Thank you. I've written down my gaps.
What things that would complement?
Oh, compliment.
Yeah.
So I think the reason the Mayor reached out for me and working with those partners, which I've already spelt out, I think that if I want to focus on the gaps, I think it isn't around when the fire service work around the safer roads piece, and a lot more time to understanding the rudiments of that. So that's a knowledge gap as opposed to complementing the Mayor. I call it the journey of the offender, you know, from the actual offence, being arrested, any liaison on diversion, the charge, the backlogs, the reports, the early release schemes. So I think having actual working knowledge of all that, I think that's how I will complement and work with the relevant partners.
Do you mind if I just add and it's an absolutely fair question, Ian. Look, I think I had the opportunity, so somebody who previously was an MP or potentially a councillor, and the people across the country who are fulfilling those roles in that way are great candidates for their own regions. The politics is my job. I really wanted was someone with to help South Yorkshire, to help the police, to help this organisation, to absolutely fundamentally challenge and support policing, to make sure that we are everything that we face, and to give reassurance to our communities and particularly to victims and survivors about the work that we do in this building and across South Yorkshire. You will get this yourselves as politicians. You get this question, it's like, why aren't you an expert in one of those areas where people need experience and they need to be able to show expertise, but this is a different type of not just complement me but exceed my skills and experience because of her deep knowledge in this place of criminal justice. So I'm really excited about that appointment. We could have gone down a different road. We could have had more political capacity in this organisation. I don't think that would have necessarily been wrong, but I feel as though absolutely Kenna Kilvinder, having that expertise in criminal justice and everything that she's already outlined and could carry on outlining, will absolutely help us to do the best we possibly can as we tackle the challenges of the future.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. But I realised when Kilvinder started that she'd got a depth of knowledge as a JP, a retired JP. I know straight away that she knew exactly the depth of knowledge that's required for this type of position. So that's why I said it was a great answer. On to yes, Councillor. Yes, yes, you can.
Question. Kilvinder, thank you for that answer. This isn't to pick holes in your answer, which is perfectly answered the question. But just noticing that journey starts with the crime and offender's journey. And this is, as Oliver alluded to earlier, the conversation that we have a lot, because as elected representatives and members of the community, the independent members, so obviously on the police side, but we see a lot of what leads up to the so just if you can comment on how your expertise starts from the crime, but how will you go back upstream from that?
Yeah. Professional background, be the social worker or the probation officer, when you're making the assessments, they are about the pathway that led to the crime. So the system starts from the crime, but actually society is involved long before. So if we're talking about young people, it is about their background, their access to education, things like neurodiversity, and again, just people's differences, but also looking at opportunities people have around alcoholism, access to drugs, dependency and recovery, mental health. So all of those things in our society, we call them the pathways to offending. They're the things that we need to tackle. We need to get upstream on that and manage those situations. And then we would find, the prison's not managing, particularly around the young people. And I don't know if the panel members know, but we're significant people from care leavers, from care experiences, right, still in writing about this in the 60s, and yet in 2025, and I can honestly tell you I want this job, because having grown officer, senior civil servant, when to get an opportunity where you can actually start talking about that, to me it was just like an amazing. I think we can tackle it with the key partners. So again, I could go on about that, because coming from that community base, I just think there's a lot of work we could do to improve people's lot, to stop them committing crime, and also within that victim space as well.
Come in as well.
For your answer so far. Just wanted to carry on that sort of line of questioning about the offender management. You've got a probation service. Work to prevent re-offending is done at probation. What can you bring into the policing side of it, specifically for revolving door offenders, where we have a lot of those locally?
I've done it again, sorry. So that comes under the guise of integrated offender management. So probation is wider than people realise. So when I joined the probation service, when I started working with and we developed the work around public protection, and I helped nationally to write those. So nearly every day of my career I've been working with the police. So so those revolving doors are around the people who are often the most difficult to reach. It's not just the probation service, but our authorities and our police work with those individuals. Often there are issues around substance misuse and alcohol, homelessness. Almost complete by David Gork, a previous law. And we're waiting to hear because that we're looking at. There's potentially more around liaison on diversion schemes, so to reach to stop that revolving door.
The next councillor is you, Ruth. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, the next question is around qualities and experience. So could you briefly outline qualities and experience that you have that make you the ideal candidate? Qualities.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know what you were saying. Qualities. My qualities. do want to talk about my qualities, because that...
I could absolutely talk about your quality, but I feel like I'll let you shine.
Oh, qualities. That's a really tough one, because by nature I'm not somebody who's going to stand on a parapet and talk about my qualities. So I really believe in the community. I believe in localism. I think the further you get away from that, the less impact you have. I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to reach their potential. So I often talk about care leavers who I don't think we give opportunities to, so that they can get a decent education and work. Qualities. It might sound a bit twee. I like people. I like engaging with people. I like getting the best for people. So I suppose that takes you back to why I trained as a social worker. I think my other qualities, I have to say, I am quite a tough cookie. You know, I want to security. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was going to just sort of fall over at the you know, a challenge or something. So I think that's a quality of mine. Governance and structures, and because you have to do to make sure that people are delivering. I believe in you know, if you're going to take the king's shilling, then you've got to work for it. So I come from, you know, my heritage is Yorkshire, which is, I mean, what you're saying.
I don't think you've sold yourself well enough.
Yeah.
We have a clear list of essential criteria for the role of Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. Every single one of those, Kilvinder doesn't exceeds it. So in terms of knowledge of policing regionally, I don't think we could have a better person influence policy at a regional level. Again, speaks for itself. Understanding the barriers faced by marginal public services and a commitment to working to I think speaks to that specific criteria. I think everything on this list in. Frankly, that's why it's taken a year to get to this point, because I was determined to be a candidate, and we do. About who you are as a person. You are tough, you are personable, you are smart, you are thoughtful. People here in our region, you are a straight talker, I have found out, and you are absolutely in the morning is because we want to serve the public, and that's absolutely what I'm sure are demonstrating here today, and will demonstrate over the next few years ahead. So as well.
Can I just comment back? And that's quite emotional responses, and I really appreciate that. Because without emotion and empathy is a sad state of affairs. So thank you for bringing that emotion to it.
Steve. Councillor Steve on.
Thanks, Chair.
So if we think strategically as opposed to plan, obviously I have to focus on that there is already the police and crime plan. That has to be those key priorities, and building that into deliverables and what those success measures would look like. About things like antisocial behaviour, you know, I don't know if I should say this or not, but she was telling me how well Barnsley. So I said, well, I'll be visiting you then, because I want to see what that success looks like, please. And then working with others around that, because that's a short term but an immediate impact you can in their town centres. I think it's really important, but a very complex one. So that will absolutely including parents and family organisations. So again, there is that. And domestic abuse. So I think working with the Chief Constable and her team about arrests, charges, take to court, what do we actually get out of this? You know, I raise charges and there's very less convictions. It's something we should actually be focused. The success measures will come from looking at where we're at now with it and then setting some I need to be talking to the Chief Constable and really working with councillors, you know. Okay, for
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wondered about public to expect the best of the police. None of us would disagree with that. But every time on social media of people saying serious, because it's a constant message and it is not helping anybody, it's not solving. I just wondered what you feel you might do to try and counter that.
I think that whole point around trust and confidence, I should have talked about that earlier, is an important one. And I think if I just think about it from that helicopter view, I think all public sector is not a place where people put positive things, is it? Nobody takes their time out to say, well, doing that. They may do it, you know, if they've had treatment in hospital. Demand that media and seeing what good looks like. So in terms of when things are good, and you know, finding a way thing, isn't it, about the bad news. You know, often I watch ITV news at 10 because they'll end with a good story, because there is good out there, and I think that's one of the things we have to do is kind of look at that there's an awful lot of legacy issues that we have to tackle, and they're still ongoing. So I think we've got confidently challenging both legacy letting our police officers for time. So I think social media, I think, is a, you know, I don't know if we'll go down the both measures, isn't it?
A couple of words to that, if you don't mind. Trust and confidence for the reasons that you've communities who do not have trust and confidence, not just in South Yorkshire, but and I think that's a national concern, not just a concern in South Yorkshire, albeit it is maybe amplified or more acute here because of some of the legacy issues that I have personally the police, the way in which working and across our communities, but I've also actually been inspired by the police, and there are, as Kilvinder says, legitimate concerns about in our police force. There will always be issues in a police force, in any public body. There will always be people who do not live up to the high standards that, but ultimately every time they ring the police, they respect that they deserve, that they will be responded to, that their issues will be I also know that Kilvinder believes that fully as well, and that's one of the reasons why those issues and those concerns.
2 people back into it? Good question. Over now to
Thank you, Chair. This is drilled into it quite a lot already. What do you see as the main challenges and opportunities?
The main challenge is going to using the microphone. Let's put it that way. Yeah, before you get there, I think one of the main challenges from day one was looking at the budget and the deficit, and the Mayor will want to respond to that in more detail. Sorry, just ask that again.
What do you see as the main challenges and opportunities in your role?
With that is I'm just really excited about pulling all that together in terms of it goes back to Councillor Horner's point about saying, be it about the police, society's ills and what we can do about it. So I think that's a great opportunity to show that in the past people work in silos, so there's great individuals or multi-agency across the teams is something I'm really excited about. And I could give examples of different types of that convening power. It's probably the cynicism, really, and we're going to have to just keep going back to that and just demonstrate that we mean what we say, and that keep coming to that, I think. Other challenges, I think, it's going to be a challenge. It'd be foolish to sit here and to 3 months. I'll be saying, look, we'll understand it better. We will things like I remember when I was in London how we looked at the level of truancy or children being excluded from school, and how many young children, perpetrators of knife crime, had been the victims of knife crime themselves and then went on to use it. That's a complex issue, so that's a challenge, but one that I'm really excited about being here in everything that I've got in my so it's a challenge and an opportunity.
yes, Richard.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just a challenge as such, but we have legacy issues. And I just wondered if you could just say a few words about your, how those issues may continue to affect the role and your sense of them at this point.
And confidence and things like that. You can't dismiss people's feelings, and they're intergenerational, and hard. And I might be people need to be seen. They need to see. There's been reviews around Rotherham, but people now need to say, okay, are those plans actually working? Have we got assurances that in relation to Orgreave, and whether there'll be a formal review of that or not? That people need transparency on that. I think we need to own it and say, look, this is if we should. Also, what actions can we take place? So I think feelings run deep, but I do believe people have got the power to forgive us. We see genuine attrition and belief that we can do better. So
no, I mean, just say, I agree with that. I think there are clearly kind of long-standing challenges that we're still in our community as a result of some of those. Think of Orgreave, the government, I believe, will follow through with their promise to hold an inquiry into also have a long-term consequence in terms of the financial because of the consequence. CSE, and we are still in South Yorkshire are still paying those costs. I believe those victims absolutely deserve justice, and they absolutely that they are receiving. But I don't always believe that that money should be just from South Yorkshire residents in the way that it currently is. I think there's our national on that very point that the funding model for those for restitution is not, I believe, fair or right, and you know we need to look again at that. And I'm challenging.
On this same question, Kilvinder, I believe that behaviour in families throughout South Yorkshire, and I was wondering what you that area of need.
Sort of coercive and controlling behaviours within families. I'm not sure what you mean with that in terms of domestic. If we wanted to see more reporting for domestic abuse, and so people report, you would see that as a failure, like there's more domestic abuse, but it isn't. I think new thing, we now call it out for what it is. So I think when in relationships, controlled individuals, be it financially, be it monitoring where they go, I think we do need to do that's around the violence against women and girls, and I do think there's more that we need to do about that. I think it's hard. Women are going to leave their homes with their children. They've got to be somewhere able to do that. They've got to be able to have support. And again, that comes at a cost, so we need to see how we can support that. So I domestic abuse. I think if we go and you see and the social media impact, we teach and girls about relationships. It should come from families, but how do we help families do that? How do we support teachers to people behaving in a way, understanding what relationship, learning the wrong things?
Yeah, it's you kind of dealing with it, but in refuge, so that these people can be brought out of the problem in the family and safely you can deal with it then. So that of a problem that needs sorting out.
In that equality space, we talk about allies, about who's going to be the ally for these individuals, and challenging that the best comes from other men, sometimes calling it out. Some adverts around recently, but actually a male colleague of somebody calling it out, a male friend calling it out, as opposed to it. So I think there's just something about getting more allyship around it and calling it out. Calling it out if somebody wants to know where their partner is every month, calling it out when they're controlling the money that they're spending, because that'll create the societal shift that we require.
Thank you. It's that the next question is.
Yeah, I just wanted to before. Obviously, I'm a councillor in Rotherham, and through the issue we sit there with CSE, what was our thing, and there's a bit of me sometimes that think there's probably set on, you know, there's got to be fuel there that's sort of underlying, and we're going to talk about sort of engage community groups later on. I suppose you like you say, you've come in as a not as a political thing. There is politics involved in this, you know. There is a push for a national inquiry, and I suppose as well back to Hillsborough and all that is almost like unfinished business. And we've had in Rotherham, you know, views, and that might have dealt with all of it, but then is it always a perception, which is where the politics between the perception and then the reality. And there's still that underlying feeling, you know, I think it's not finished yet, and while whether we're not doing, you know, and the government said they were going to do a national inquiry and they've sort of reneged on bits and bobs and stuff like that, is that there's still this feeling that if it's not, the boil's not lanced, phrase, that you can't get sort of South African trial, you know, truth and reconciliation type like that, and I mean that is going to be an issue that's going to be over the summer.
Okay, do you mind if I answer first, and then because that is a slightly more political question, and I'd rather sort of step her own views. But look, I think you're right in the way that you've described that, in the sense that there is clearly still a lack of trust and confidence about child sexual exploitation. I actually think in Rotherham, and it is a credit to kind of the more significant than in other parts of this country, and I think that's one of the reasons why we point to it and say actually absolutely to change the way that services respond to those challenges. It's different now in Rotherham than it was, but that is not to say two things. One, we will never be complacent about those issues in Rotherham, nor should we, or anywhere else in South Yorkshire. Is absolutely right. There is no complacency anywhere in that. I think that you can never be complacent about that. You have to absolutely avoid that, no complacency. Absolutely fair for some communities and some people to came to the fore, particularly in places like Rotherham, and want to be assured that that progress is still being made. Quite frankly, because we know that the legal issues around that are still being progressed to this day. There are still people facing prosecution. There are still issues going through our courts, and so kind of for the reassurance of all our communities. But we have to keep on talking about that. The job's been done. We've absolutely solved it. Don't worry about it. We're moving on. Finding both ourselves and the public, we rely on that. This has to be something we keep on looking at time and time and time again. Kilvinder, previous experience in these areas and in these issues, and has to be at the forefront of preferred candidates. So I'm glad that you raise it, because we have to keep on raising it. We have to keep on talking about it, and it should never be one of those things that we say, well, it's okay because it was simply in the past. It was not, and we have to keep on dealing with it.
So I think from my perspective, taking that operational experience and doing the right thing by the victims and meeting the victims and keeping that dialogue ongoing until they feel there's been some truth and reconciliation, and also having those governance arrangements that they are being taken seriously. There was too much adultification of girls who were children and victims. There was too much fear of that. You know, do people now feel confident about being able to do that, calling it out? Are people isn't happening? I think we put those in place, we will move people's confidence. We're going to do confidence by showing and demonstrating people, by returning to them we've got to ourselves into a better place, but that way it's a proper change as opposed to just a super.
Thanks, Kilvinder. Over to the next, it's yours. Back to you, Tim. Councillor Tim.
How will you be assisting the
I'm trying to wonder about. I think I've answered some of that, haven't I? And so yeah, I'm just worried about. So part of it will. The thing I is, so I'm really eager to do that, and already talk to who are linked in with those community groups, because it's not about reinventing the wheel. There's some really good to go there. About how working with the Chief Constable and her team and the Mayor and looking at we asked the communities, you know, what would make you feel more. How does that translate when we talk across the piece? Work is happening and people do address it, but they're not transparent with it. So how do we increase transparency? What about the knife crime and the pathway, like antisocial behaviour? We need to look at a bit Larry. Is it more serious than that? Is it about access to, you know, the old kind of clubs that have gone through austerity, etc. So I think there's an awful lot of detail within that we get into and have a real delivery plan.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you go first. So I will tell you this: it's crime in these things, because I think we took a long time. The previous commissioner to finally get rural crime sort of noticed as rural crime, yeah, as a to the mayor that when writing the plan that we could speak to people writing it as well, and it was included in there. But I think sometimes there's a perception from the outside that kind of South Yorkshire looks like this, that's it. It's county and it's rural woods, you know, things like that. But there is a lot of you know, I mean, I've met some of the rural communities there, and they could tell a story about armed people. It's serious organised crime. You know, it's not Claude Greengrass with his whippet, you know, just nicking a few rabbits to, you know, and that they are the people who hunt the deer and do that. They are the people pushing the drugs and all that sort of stuff as well. And it, you know, and there's a lot of money flows into it, and they're stealing sort of specialist equipment. And I just wondered in terms of that, if I pick on that, and you know, what your views on those.
Well, I was a director in Oxfordshire for quite a while, and a rural because it industrialised theft of their equipment. It was about and looking at how that balance between target hardening isn't there, as well as targeting the individuals who do. Really needed to look at what that looks like for South Yorkshire. But
can I just build on that, because it is an issue close. You're right to kind of point to the seriousness of those issues, and they aren't fluffy issues around the periphery. They are central to how off-road bikes, fuel theft, you know, cases we've seen, particularly when people have reported some of those crimes. So I was really heartened actually by some of the kind of more modern approach. But it's not always the case that those digital or technical solutions are available to police colleagues, but in that instance they've made exceptions. But we need to build on that innovation, and we absolutely need to treat those issues with the seriousness that they deserve, because actually most people in South Yorkshire kind of a beautiful part of the world, but
yes, Richard.
Operational management of the police force is holding the that things are where they should be, and where there are issues. I'm sure from everything you've shared, in terms of bringing challenge assurance, you know, just when you say how you would sort of do that, and you know how we would, you're assured.
Challenge and high support, isn't it? And the Chief Constable and her team are professionals, and so there is something around ensuring that we've agreed some success measures or agreed some improvements, and make sure that they're realistic and that we all agree with them, and then looking at, you know, whether it's trajectories in terms of how they're going to attain them. It is about convening the meetings and having the governance structures in place so that I can see that we've got the transparency, that direct line of sight in terms of where those improvements need to be, and they're happening. So, you know, the challenge will be in the end, being at the individuals being accountable for those. If not, that, you know, conversations with the mayor about that in terms of where that, how we bring that to the panel.
Let me just add that I think we've got pretty good relationships, really, so I'm
Yeah,
not kind of
definitely,
making problems where there aren't any.
No,
but
well,
thank you.
but yeah, you need a shirt. But yeah, I understand.
Yes, Councillor Steve.
Thanks. Police and crime plan, and it's around road safety and the Safer Roads, South Yorkshire Safer Roads Partnership will be coming, you know, within your remit, and I must have governance around that organisation, so it'd be good to get some clarity on that in due course. You know, building up that particular area, which is of a great deal of importance to our residents.
One, I'm going to have what that is going to look like for us. And I will also need to understand the governance arrangements in relation to that, and what the give you that assurance. I will be able to come back those arrangements.
Can I just add to that? Fair question, clearly, but the governance for the Safer Roads Partnership. So those a brave new world for this organisation as well, because of the work, the way we can join up that. So in terms of the governance, essentially it was an independent kind of bit of the system, which was essentially one influence all the different councils, and essentially the councils. Why we've brought that back in, we've now recruited to those, kind of trying to build up I'm really confident about it, but it is a need to do this as well. That be something that too many people getting seriously injured, lots of serious injuries as well. So we should nothing else, just as a signal to the rest of the system, because it has to be the whole system that responds, that we take this incredibly seriously.
Yeah, while we're talking about roads, because it's before you've arrived, as it were, but the Sheffield councils across parties have had a particular issue with the police about an operation which was very successful and then was cancelled. The issue around road safety is dangerous parking, and that is a police responsibility. 2,000 outstanding requests. People already large amount of money now going to but the procedure for putting in WL lines involves all sorts of orders and enforcing dangerous parking. Now that, I think, is an issue. It's a partnership, and I certainly believe, which they currently don't have, but what are your views on that? Because I'm sure the noisy Sheffield councillors who keep complaining.
I think that's the thing where you have to have a zero tolerance for it, don't you? They stop doing it, but people will do it whilst you're not acting on it. So I think that's from my kind of, it's a bit like the broken windows syndrome. Worse, and actually it is dangerous. You're having to step on the road instead, and it's just thoughtfulness, So you've So yeah, and that might sound really unpessimistic for me. You have to enforce things if you actually want to change things.
Mr. Richard Hindley.
Thank you, Chair. My question's in two parts. The first part is yeah, how you previously engaged with diverse community groups, yeah.
I'll try and do two. Are you going to stay with me for contrasting one? So when I was in London, it was I can't remember exact numbers, but about over 60% of the people we were supervised were from ethnic minority groups, but yet the commissioning we were doing with community groups didn't match that. So doing a lot of market stall events to get grassroots organisations to work with us, because I believe if you want to reintegrate people back into their communities, and you need to get the grassroots community. It's very much bringing in the charities run by people from ethnic minorities to help them get employment and housing to break that cycle. Another is the work I've been doing for a number of years around with veterans. So local authorities, as government departments, we've signed a covenant. Served in the military are not disadvantaged in any way. So we've worked again about people who have served, including reservists and wide service. There's a certain kind of profile, but also our staff members. It's taken me 2 years, but before I leave, have a staff network for so they're as a diverse community and have special needs as much as any other group. So I've given you two completely different ways, but yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I guess that then feeds into the second part of the question, which is, you know, hard to reach groups.
I think the key is talking to. So, you know, for me it was a great privilege to work with people who'd formerly served. It's like you need a key to get in, you need a network, you need the way you get in, and then you have to prove your worth. In our communities that we wanted to reach out to, we'd need to find the people looking at particular religion. Might want to find somebody who's one of the, if it was a community in the rural, you know, there will be key individuals, there'll be key farmers who do that engagement first, introduction, and say, right, it's a bit nice saying, come on, get me into the circle and do that.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So again, can I pick up a sort of? I think that I kind of was in France when this happened, and I think there was a former commissioner met. Basically, said you've got three groups of people who were at Manvers. You've got the far right, or that the useful idiots who then, you know, something's kicking off, or we want to be, or that there was a community there that had got worries, and you know, and I think that sort of we've obviously discussed this at full council and all that, and it's very easy to turn around and go, it's wrong, it's that, and it is wrong, and it is that. But what the and anybody who's extreme, they prey on that sort of weakness that can be seen in that community. And I saw a letter that was written by the community group that was before then, and they'd expressed concern about that there was a lot of people who come in there. They never mentioned race or anything. We've got a lot of men who've just turned up into our community that we just stuff like that. And I think that as a group of politicians and things like that, we probably didn't engage with those enough, and it's very easy to turn around. It was wrong. It was wrong and all that, but I just as a group that we've made, you know, the far right prey on weakness and look for it and give easy answers and stuff like that. And I think, you know, like we need to, is there a way trying to engage those stuff like that, rather than, because I think it's spoken down to rather than being listened to.
I agree, and again, I'll state the obvious here as a brown woman. I'm really happy to have those conversations with people who are, you know, the ideas that they have. I think it's important to listen to them because they are done by other people. So they're legitimate concerns. Everybody is heard. So I'd be eager to do that for it. But people's fears. Sometimes there's a legitimate thing that we have to act on. That's the difficult conversations that we do need to have, because if you don't have them, situation like that from my perspective. But if you're looking for assurances that I'm willing to have those conversations and listen to all those conversations.
That's a good answer as well. Thank you. Which is Councillor Nigel Harper.
Thank you, Chair. You've touched on already. Successful relationships with partners, and can you give engaged with stakeholders?
So my approach is very much a personable one. So it will be going out to people or inviting people to come and see me. It will be reaching out to those groups. There's statutory people, you know, there's the key partners we have to meet. But I think just being out and them, I think reaching out to people, I had to do a community group in London after the shooting of one of our offenders who was going to 200 community members that happening. We knew that was the only answer, that this person was going to come out. Stakeholders, you've got to, there'll be formal meetings where I have to be formal, and then there'll be other meetings where I knowing which hat I'm going to wear and what the end game is as well. I don't mean that flippantly, but sometimes you and just working that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Believe it or not, Kilvinder. This is a very good question. What do you believe the relationship between the Deputy Mayor and the Police and Crime Panel should be? Relationship.
My relationship, just leave it on. My relationship with the Chief Constable and the Port High Challenge. So patience whilst I'm new. Less patience as I know.
I think the question was also about how your relationship with
Similar, so where I would be looking at a relationship with this relationship as well, where the support as well. I'm not turning it off.
Yes, Ruth.
Thank you. Just to expand on that question, obviously this panel is authorities plus some independent members, and what I'm very now it's impossible for us to represent everybody. We is that we see played out in our community. We can talk end of things, so that decision making setting, but we also speaking from an elected member point of view, it can feel to influence. And I say that very carefully for elected members to be and to what we see in our communities, but that we are having to knock very hard at the door. So I guess opportunities in your relationship with this panel, that relationship and that opportunity for elected members, that's not the only channel.
So I think we're going to have to, I think it should be open to that for you to be able to, from my experience about the community, how we listen to that's where voices are heard for the community with the police there and the local authorities and other agents the priorities. So operational example is integrated offender management, where Barnsley might need something else because they're differently difficult. So it is about arrangements we've already got in play are working and not here. So making sure, be it strategic partnerships, just local innovations that they're, and when they're not working, they're escalated.
Can I just add to that? Because I Ron, nearly 12 months. I've always really through this forum, but councillors more broadly, our MP, bring a level of insight and information from the ground up for me, and I'm sure will be useful for Kilvinder. And you know, if we're being frank, always had the time to be able to engage in the way that maybe I would have liked or you would have liked, or it was easier, but certainly kind of, you know, individual council. The deputy mayor is that she would clearly have more got to those conversations and learn from your experiences and colleagues' experiences about what needs to be done. Clearly none of us have operations, absolutely right, but we can collaborate, work together and provide that insight in order to change things. Appreciate it, I'm sure Kilvinder will as well.
Thank you. At this point, Steve on it.
Thanks. Success been measured, if you wanted, and how would you demonstrate you're achieving value for taxpayers?
Success measures, aren't we? Be it the antisocial behaviour, be it you know, if you start looking at like knife crime, what's a success measure there? Look at it around the zero. What did you call it?
Vision Zero.
Vision Zero. You know, that's going to get this year. What is that going to look? What's year going to look like? Around setting some success measures and in there, and holding me to account. We collectively are not able to attain them. You need to be able to understand. And this reason, this has suddenly come from left of centre. Where we can, we'll quantify it, and you should hold me to account for that, and I should be able to say why we're not achieving it, or why we're achieving it, or when we'll achieve it. What was the value for money? We have to be able to deliver on this, so I need to be able to be accountable for what I'm doing in my time. So it's not just going to be about, well, I've met all these communities. So I think I've got to find a way, and as this is a new post, to articulate that to you. At the next panel, being able to articulate something a bit more. This is the plan, this is what I'll be bringing to you, and that's what I do. I think we're still very early in that, we haven't built that.
Continue to have this conversation clearly. I know you will continue to have this conversation with us. Well, we have to be a bit careful about those things that in our control, and so, you know, there are limits to, you know, there's operational independence for the police at our communities. There is the interplay between other public services, etc., etc., etc. So we always have to be a bit careful about that. But I think the spirit of the question is Kilvinder is to continue that conversation. I will be involved in that conversation as well.
To a panel and to work. like the Mayor said, we've been doing this with all the other guys, hopefully, I'll be able to pull it off meaningful.
I think the key success measure is, does she press the button before hold her to account every single time on that?
Yes, the next two questions about personal. I'd like to pass you over now to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you provide and without favour?
I will try my very without the fear or favour, absolutely. If I'm really honest with you, not being so, you know, huge, and we've got to face that, and I'm not afraid to face that. And so people who might not like me because of you, as long as they're not part of it, everybody has got a view.
Yes.
About if we represent those people who, how will you make sure they're not
And that's where I'll at the Mayor's office, the competence officers, you know, throughout my experience, talking up and loudest, and let them have their view, but then be confident enough to say, actually, so if you could just spoken yet. So I think it's the confidence in the room as well to be able to say, I've heard, and actually explain it back. This is what I've just heard you say. Like, now I need to. And it's also getting community that is quiet, which is the community forgotten. So you've spoken up for them. That's prompted me to think, absolutely. Somebody else might say, well, what about, and that's.
Can I just go back to a comment that was made earlier in the communities, and I use that phrase and other people use that phrase, and I'm guilty of this too, but I think we collectively know, don't we, to reach, and the question we not gravitate towards means it's sometimes just easier to go the extra mile in order to be able to talk to those communities who don't always reach out, who don't always speak up, who don't always have that opportunity, and you know, about the fact that we aren't simply gravitating towards the loudest voices. It's always hard, but we absolutely have to be conscious of that at all.
I want to really pad this question out because it's so important. Would you consider then something like the that the Mayor has assembly to ensure, so through the sortition process, it is a genuinely
quickly, because I'm conscious of not putting Phil, you know, the background to the citizens assembly, or indeed kind of the cost of the citizens assembly, and it was significant in terms of cost. I'm really proud of it. I think it was in some really, I think, powerful organisation, indeed us as a region, to be done. So before there's a principal point, absolutely. Resources under so much strain down. that road directly, albeit direct democracy or more deliberative democracy. We'll want to speak about.
Considered. I don't think you them and then you have to cost them. Then you can either do it or not, but is there another way of doing it as well? So I think everything has got to be on the table that to be considered at least.
So you can take a break. So item 12, it's Henry Cottage. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Given the nature of our conversation so far and the imagination for this one a little bit, how will you balance the need to operate within the constraints of the Mayor's policy? The need to maintain your personal values and independence with the need to operate within the constraints.
I think just open dialogue really, and if I disagree what that actually means, I think. Is that all right? Different governments over the last 30 years and I've not always, but I think ultimately the red line, then I've never had to get there before, so I think what the challenges are and both of us being able to have the preferred candidate, Oliver has set the crime plan, can deliver on it, so far so good, and from value I think they're the right things to do on a good footing, and we might just have to have an arm wrestle at the end of it.
Can I just add to that, because I think this, and it's about kind of, when I reached out to Kilvinder and asked her to be, I wasn't looking for someone that agreed with me on everything. I was looking for someone that challenged me, that brought new information, ideas, expertise to the table, and by its very nature that means I will be challenged. So yeah, of course I have principles, and I was elected on the basis of those principles, against those principles, and clearly when Kilvinder and I were having this conversation about whether or not she wanted to from me and indeed from this team, but if I was just bringing on someone who could be a version of me in this room, it would be fair. The system is about all of us challenging each other respectfully and appropriately, of course, but absolutely bringing you, because I think that's exactly what, that's the important point, and that's what grown-up politics differently than perhaps sometimes that is done in Westminster, to show people that this can be a force for good, and that's what I expect.
Thank you for answers, both of you. For me, there are some echoes of the separation of powers between politics in general being preserved in the two different roles between the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. The Home Secretaries we've had recently for that separation of powers.
Thanks, Henry, for that. And also to thank you, because now I know you're not afraid to tell him when it comes to the crunch, which is very good news actually. I mean, that's something that needs to be monitored. Anyway, Kilvin, clarify any of the previous responses.
I want to demonstrate I can press a button on and off for myself, but no further. Thank you.
Again for attending and answering the questions the panel. I will now officially close the confirmation hearing, and the panel will go into a closed session to make its recommendation. Once we'll invite you back to the meeting to inform you and share the outcome. It will also be communicated to the Mayor in writing.